Hey, thanks for checking out this video. Today we're going to look at a few ways in which you can take an initial sketched idea and then turn that into a digital illustration you can then use to create printed products like t-shirts and posters and so on. And we're then also going to look at a few ways you can create images which you can use on social media or on an online store to help sell those products as well. So let's get stuck straight into it. Okay, so this is the final design which we're going to end up with. And it's basically just a sort of fun abstract sort of tiger design based around a fictional company which I've made up, which was also based around just a sort of initial sketched idea I had a little while ago. So I thought it'd be quite a fun thing to turn into an actual finished design, and also to show a few different colour variations as well. So this is what we're going to end up with. We've got a few different colours and then our finished t-shirt mock-ups as well. So let's go straight into the sketched idea I had and start building that up. So I've got this set up here, and as you can see this was my quite rough, quite sketchy pencil design that I did. And to take that to the next step, I basically decided with this design to actually create a pen drawing version of it instead. So often I would maybe go straight onto the computer and use the pen tool or pencil tool and create a vector version. But in this instance, I thought it'd be quite fun to actually just go straight from pen drawing and then try and maintain some of those originally drawn sort of pen lines and sort of imperfections that you get with the design. So if I was going to use the pen tool though, I'll just show you that now. So if I just zoom in and just do a new layer, and just grab the pen tool. I've actually done a quite a long video on sort of using the pen tool or pencil tool to create your own vector designs. But let's just have a quick run through of how that works anyway. So literally you can just click down to create your nodes and eventually create your shapes. So I'm just doing this quite roughly here. But in fact, while I'm doing that, I'm going to just change the colour so we can see it a bit more prominently over on the colour panel, of course. And yeah, you can just quickly go through and start to build up your shape. As you can see, I'm not doing this particularly well because I'm just rushing through it. But the point is you can do that with something like the pen tool or pencil tool and create your, or sort of recreate your design. But for this tutorial, I'm actually going to show you another way you can do it just by using essentially the pixel persona and some of the tools within that persona. So if I just zoom out and just show you here, and actually I'm also, while I'm here, I'm just going to show you something which I spotted. So what I'm going to do with this design is I'm going to paint in various colours to make it sort of punchier, as we've seen in the final design which I showed you. And I noticed that I've actually got a few gaps here. So I'm going to fill those in a moment, but you can see that if I was to fill this area of design, it would go all the way around here, all the way through here, and eventually just sort of fill into this main area. So we don't want that to happen. We want to have it sort of blocked off like a sort of bridge, so it sort of stays in the same place or within the confines of the design. So I'm going to show you how I fix that as well. But the first thing we're going to do is go over to the pixel persona in the top left corner. So those of you who don't know, the designer persona is where all your sort of vector creation tools are. You know, as I say, pen tool, shape tools, things like that. And the pixel persona is where all your pixel or raster based design tools live. So for this example, we're going to mostly stay around the pixel persona instead. Especially compared to one of my previous videos. So now we're in the pixel persona. Let's do a new layer just at the bottom here, add a pixel layer this time, which is just shown here as well. And now what we're going to do is go over to the flood fill tool. So if I just click on that and then change these settings we have available to us, we can then basically recreate the design. So first of all, I'm going to change the tolerance to 60% with this. With the few tests I've done, that seemed to be the best, giving the best results. And then we're going to change the source layer to layers beneath. Now this is really important that you change this one especially. Now without this, you will basically fill the whole layer, which is not what we need. So make sure this is, in this case, changed to layers beneath. And I'm also going to turn off contiguous, because that will just, when that's on, and in this case, it would, if I clicked here, it would just fill the eye area. But I actually want to create a new, basically sort of tracing the design with pixel data. So I want to do the whole thing. And I'm going to turn this color to black. Everything's set up there. So now if I just zoom in a little bit, so you can see what I'm doing, I'm just going to click on here. And that has basically, in probably like less than a second, created a new layer. So I'm just going to prove that, turn that on and off. That's my actual scan, by the way. So that was, I say scan, that was a photograph taken from my phone and just put straight into the into my designer document. So that's literally all I've done with that. It was just a photograph taken and then put straight in. As you can see, there's a few imperfections there, which sometimes we quite like those, but yeah, this was literally just a photograph. Now what we've created is a copy of that, which is a flat sort of rendition of it. So you've got all these nice little, again, little imperfections, little scratchy lines. So if we were to make this with the pen tool, it would be quite difficult to create those lines specifically, and it would be a much smoother design. But for this, I actually really wanted it to be kind of, you know, imperfect and to keep those scratchy lines, especially like here. You've got this really nice little sort of distorted line here, but as you can see, everything is blocked off. All my shapes are sort of, yeah, sectioned off and everything. So that's basically what I was after, which is great. So now we shouldn't need these other two layers, but we'll just keep them turned off. And then what I'm going to do is fix those two gaps that I mentioned. And the way we're going to do that is make sure the layer is selected, go over to the Freehand Selection tool for this one, and I'm just going to zoom in, just by using the option and scroll technique for this. And I'm just going to select this area here. And now what I'm going to do is I'll do it with the sort of traditional method. I'm going to go edit, copy, and edit paste. And that's now, and also if I just deselect like so, that's now giving me a new duplicate line. And what I'm going to do with this is use that to fix my little issue I've got here. And I can resize that accordingly, and just drop it in place. The benefit to doing this, as opposed to using the brush tool or any other tool, is I'm using an element of my actual design, so it's going to keep the same characteristics. And again, it's just a nice, quick and easy way to do that. So yeah, this is a really nice way to do it. And I'm just going to copy this one again. So this time I'm going to hold Option down and drag, and I'll get the same results. And I can once again just resize that accordingly. So now that's in place. I like how that's looking. For this to work with this method, what I'm now going to do is merge these pixels together. So for this to work, well, the easiest way I'd like to do this is just to group these pixel layers together, like so, Command G, once they're selected, and then go over to the layer panel and right click and click on rasterize and trim. All that's done is it's just flattened those three elements I had into one nice and simple layer. So now let's just zoom out a little bit more. Now let's go back to the flood fill tool and let's add some colour. So as you remember from my final design, I actually had quite nice bright punchy like yellow and reds for this. So let's start to fill that out. So I'm going to do a new layer again, new pixel layer, and I'm going to make sure my same settings are on there. So layers beneath, and And actually this time I'm just going to stick to contiguous because I want it to just be in specific areas. So let's just start to fill the design, and it's literally that quick and easy to do. So we're just going to go through, add our sort of electric bolt areas to the design, and start to add some sort of dynamic colours to it. And again, the way I like to do this is to keep my colours on different layers. So I find that a much easier way to go back and design something, or tweak something, should I say, when everything is nicely laid out. And with this design, it's kind of, the idea is that we're making something which is a design which could be screen printed, or at least have the essence of a screen printed design. So traditionally that is done in layers, or obviously in screens. So this makes it nice and easy to sort of emulate that kind of design. Now let's add another colour to this, and I'm going to change this to red. And let's try filling in this larger area we've got here. So as you can see, it was particularly beneficial for me to add these little blocks. So that's just literally like sealed in my colour there, and stopped it from filling over the whole design. I'm actually going to do something different now, because as you can see, it's nice and easy and really quick to actually go through and just start to paint in these blocks of colour. But I'm going to do it a little bit differently, and I'm going to turn these layers off, and I'm just going to start to fill in those same areas, but this time with white and 50% grey. And I'll tell you why I'm going to do that. So first of all, let's select our grey. Now conveniently, if we go over to the swatches panel, we've got black, 50% grey, and white instantly available to us without having to change anything. It's just there straight away. And I believe greys on our options here is the default as well, so that will probably be shown straight away on your screen there. So let's select grey, and let's do the same thing we did with the red, and also do a new layer first, and just fill that area again. So we want that to be grey, and I think let's turn this sort of tongue, I guess, area sort of grey as well. There we go. And I'm going to fill these areas in white. Now we won't be able to see that perfectly well, but we will see a little preview over here. But we know where we're going to fill, and we know that that's worked. There we are. You can see the preview there. And this is just an example as well. I've got obviously the finished version on another layer, on another document, should I say. But this is just to show you how this technique works. Let's turn that white as well, his nose, and zoom in a bit, go for the eye. And let's go for some teeth as well. So let's go for this one, and just these front few. Right, so this is just, again, as an example. What I'm now going to do is add an gradient map adjustment to this design. So this is one of my favourite features in Affinity Designer. It's so handy, and in this example it can just save you so much time. So just to run through again, we've got the black sort of line drawing layer, and we've got our sort of grey blocky sort of body area, and some bolts in white as well. So let's go to the top there, and my artboard layer, should I say, and go down to our adjustment layers at the bottom here, and add this gradient map. Now that's going to give us some crazy colours. So straight off the bat, that will give you these red, green and blue options here. But what it's doing is essentially replacing the colours that you had selected for any colours you want to have here. So on the far left of the scale, this was where our black lines were, which has now gone red. So let's just change that straight away by clicking on this. And again, we can go back to how it was originally, which was black there, but let's make this actually a bit more interesting. And try something completely different. So let's go for like a purple, and let's turn this into maybe like a yellow or orange or something, and let's turn this into white. So the beauty of this is, actually let's make this blue. Yeah, a bit more interesting. The beauty of this is it allows you to completely recolor your design in seconds. So if you were to have to do this manually and have various artboards set up, recoloring each one individually really can take a lot of time. And the thing I particularly like about this technique is it allows you to come up with new designs which you, in my case, I wouldn't have thought of using these colours naturally. It just allows me to quickly try sort of new colour options and see if they fit with the sort of design I want to end up with. So it's a really great way to do that. And again, with this option, I'm just going to close that. I've actually got my artboard set up to be a white background. So if I turn that off, you'll see that which areas are filled in and which areas aren't. So it just kind of gives us a bit more clarity to the areas. So these were obviously the white bits that I filled in. And just one other little thing I want to show you to highlight this, how this can be quite handy, and also how having them on separate pixel layers can be particularly handy. If I bring this outline layer to the top, just with our shortcuts we have here, like so, that is then going to allow me to just reposition my design. Now what I quite like to do, just by nudging up and down a little bit, I like to kind of offset the outline, because what that does is it literally makes it look like it's kind of been screen printed, or like maybe riso printed or something on like a risograph printer. So it gives it more of a natural look. So a lot of the time with these digital designs, they can look nice and clean and slick, and that's perfect as well. But often it's quite fun to try and keep the natural handmade imperfections in there as much as you can. And I think that's a really fun way to do that, just by just nudging the top outline layer just off, where it was on your design. It just gives you a nice, really sort of fun, really fun way to just try and keep that natural element there. Okay, so we've got some funky colours there. I'm actually going to go back to our red and black and yellow option that we had, just so it fits in with our final design. And I'm going to do that just by clicking on the gradient map again. Let's turn this back to black and put this as a red. And this is how easy you can do this as well. You just literally click on there in the middle there, and you can adjust the position to change the sort of level of it. But let's keep that on 50, turn this to red, and put this back to yellow, just so it's kind of more in keeping with what we're going to end up with. Also worth noting that if you click on the colour option here, you can change this to swatches. So what I find quite useful, if I'm working to a specific sort of brand guidelines or something where I need it to be a very specific colours, that is a great way to do that, just by going straight to your swatches and selecting that colour straight away. Because as long as this fill that you had here is the 50% grey, and this is black and this is white, you will get exactly the same swatch colour. So it's a really quick way to do that and to ensure that you're being quite specific with your colours. Great, so yeah, that's that part of the design. Now let's look at adding that circular text that we had to the design as well. So to do this, I'm actually going to switch back to the designer persona for this, and we're just going to do we can just naturally just grab the ellipse tool. Let's do a new layer as well, just to keep everything organised. Now we've got the ellipse tool, and let's just create our circular shape. So I'm holding down shift there to keep the even proportions to my circle. And what I'm going to do, as you can see, there's no, on my colour panel, there's no colour added to the stroke or the fill. and I'm going to go straight to the artistic text tool, and I'm going to just click on here. Now, as you can see, if I was to click here, that would create a new piece of text, but I actually want to click on the shape, and as you can see, it changes to be a sort of type on a path option instead. So if I just click around about here, you'll see we're now given these two options to be able to edit this text. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change my font to one I've previously selected, and the sort of fictional brand I called this was the Tiger Lightning Supply Company. So I've just typed in my first line there, and now I'm just going to increase the size of the text. So first of all, I'm just going to select that, and you can just go over to the top here and increase that like so. But the other thing you might need to do is, if you want to have extra controls over your text here, is just make sure that your character panel is on. So let's go to View, and let's go Studio and click Character. So I'm just going to drag that in like so, so it just sort of sits comfortably there. And now we've got a few more options here. But yeah, let's double click the text there to be able to adjust that. And I'm just going to I can just hover over it without even clicking. And on my mouse, I have obviously a scroll wheel there. So I can just quickly increase that like so. And while I'm here, I'm going to do a few other things. So I've selected my text, and I'm going to click Center Align. And now what we can do is adjust these little points here. So this is the start point and end point of our type on a path, basically. So by adjusting that, you'll see also there's a little snap that happens there, which is really, really handy. So it just shows you that you're perfectly in the middle there of our ellipse. And again, for this example, I just need this to be a little bit bigger, so let's just scroll that back up as well. And also worth mentioning, if I hold Shift, that will jump that up in increments of 10, which is great, just saves a bit of time. So let's leave that around about there, say 140. And the way I like to do this is, just to make life a bit easier, you can keep typing and it would eventually go around. But to have the best control, where I have my text the right way around and I can just control it much easier, if I press, in this case, Command J, just to duplicate that layer, I then have another layer here, as you can see, and I can just rotate that. So it keeps everything perfectly in that circle, on that path, on that circular path. But now, as you can see, it is the wrong way around. So let's fix that by going over to the options we have here. By clicking on Reverse Text Path, it's now the actual logical way. And I just need to increase the baseline as well by scrolling that up. Increase that baseline. There we go. Now that is perfectly in line with everything. So that's one option with the designers. We could just duplicate the text, but the actual phrase, should I say. But I want this to be kind of like a brand, or like a fictional clothing brand or something. So I'm going to Command A to select all of the text, and I'm going to change that to the full brand name. Like so. So that is actually quite a nice fit. Usually you might call these things, supply co or something, but just to fit like an even amount of text, I thought this would be a bit more pleasing on the eye. And while we're there, let's just adjust this as well. So I'm just going to go over to my options here. I'm actually just going to drag this out so we can see it a bit clearer. I can show you what I'm doing as well. I just want to adjust the gap we have here. So if I just go to my tracking options, that is going to adjust the whole of the text. But what I actually want to do is adjust my kerning specifically. So if I just do the same thing again, I can just hover over it. I'm just going to adjust the gap between the P and the A. So that instantly, for me, just tidies up the whole thing a little bit more. When I didn't have it, the gap was a bit too big. Now if I just drag that back in, it's just a bit more fitting with everything we had going on. So there we go. Let's just move that back over here. Right, so now we have our sort of text. One thing I like to do is just add, it's just a personal preference. I just like to add 2 little circles, like so, just to sort of space the design a bit more, and just make it look intentional that I've left this gap here. And again, I can just do that dead simply, clicking and dragging with Alt there. And what I'm also going to do is group those together. Group my 2 text layers together, which I've got here. And just make sure these are aligned. They're actually pretty much perfectly aligned anyway. But if I just do this exaggerated so you can see it. If I click on those 2 layers and then go to my alignment options, I'm just literally going to click this button here and that will align the 2 perfectly. This should also do the same thing. So then we know that that's actually aligned. But for my eye, I might want to just nudge that up a little bit. It's a personal preference thing. So really just, I would say it's really important just to trust your eyes with it. If it looks a little bit off, even though it's telling you it's right, there are other variables going on, like with this Y, and the way that the T, there's a gap here. So it's just worth keeping an eye on it and really just trusting if it looks right to your eyes. So let's group these together. And we can simply just drag these over here. And I'm actually going to increase the size of the artboard just to make life easier. One thing to mention while we're here, lock children is a really important thing to keep an eye on. So with this on, we can freely adjust the artboard layout. So, we can just move that around like so, or let's say change the width here. So actually I'll just do that just to eye, just for this example, so we can get it to fit a bit more. If the lock children button is off, I'm actually just going to increase this as well. Just a bit more sort of evenly spaced. There we go. If the lock children is ticked off, then when we resize the artboard, we resize everything. So that is actually a really handy thing to bear in mind, because sometimes you want to resize an artboard and your design within said artboard. So it's not necessarily obvious that is how you would go about doing that. So just worth bearing in mind. That is how you would resize things going forward. Great. So now we've got our sort of rough design, and again, ideally I'd probably increase the size of the text a little bit more, but this is just to show you how you would sort of create that. So the next thing I want to show you is how you can maybe create a couple of extra color variations. So I'm just going to make a more of a square version here, and to be honest, I'm actually not doing this the correct way. I'm going to put this in manually in my transform area. So this is quite a big document now, which is good because we want it. It's largely raster based information, and we want it to appear nice and crisp when it's printed on something. So it is beneficial to keep it at a fairly high document size, especially if you're printing sort of A3 or bigger. But let's just keep this like a nice square format for now. So if I go to this option here and change the height to, let's just round that up slightly, to 660, hit enter, and by going over to the middle here, that will make sure that it actually evenly resizes the top and bottom. So that's definitely worth bearing that in mind as you're resizing. Great, so now we've got more of a sort of nice social media friendly square version. Let's create some other color options of this design. Now I'm actually going to go in and I'm going to finish the coloring that we did. And to do that, I'm going to need to, in this case, And again, originally I would have finished colouring in, but I'm just going to show you that process. I'm going to put my my offset outlined design back in the right place. I quite like where I've put it here, so I'm actually going to duplicate this one as my future sort of placement. Turn that off, and let's nudge that back to where it was originally. So there we can see that's like a nice perfect fit to how it was originally. So now let's create a new pixel layer, and let's fill in the rest of these areas. So I think just for now, we've got our gradient map still selected, but let's go back to the pixel persona. Let's grab the flood fill tool again, make sure we've got white selected, and let's go back to our actual layer as well, and let's fill this in. So with this gradient map still active, we can just start to fill in the areas again. But the key thing to remember here is that we need to make sure our outline is actually underneath the layer that we're going to fill itself. So I'm going to do that with our little shortcut again. Make sure that's at the bottom there. And now we can go back to the fill layer we want to use, and make sure the white is selected and start to fill. I'm just going to speed up this process too, just to save a little bit of time. So there we go, here's my finished design. Again, with a bit more time, I'd probably add a bit more variation here, and just add some maybe other elements. Maybe I would duplicate one of these bolts down here, but this is just a rough example of this process really. We have our finished designs here where I've spent a little bit more time looking at the spacing of the text, and just looking at that print offset technique as well. But yeah, just for this technique, I'll show you how you can then go on to the next step. So I'm going to go back to my layers, and I'm going to turn the outline off down here and turn the original back on. So now we've got our nice offset feature again, and let's select all of this information here, and I'm just going to copy that like so. I'm going to go to this t-shirt mock-up template I have here ready to go. So I'm just going to move this to the side and copy this here, and as you can see, it has kept my sort of grayscale color choices. So to start off with, let's just group this just to make life a bit easier, and let's go back to our design here, and let's grab this gradient map adjustment. Now we can do this simply by going copy and paste again like so. Now by copying it into the document, it's just going to go to the top and therefore apply to everything else below it. But what we need to do is just drag it underneath into our group. Now that's put those original mock-ups back to how they were, and it has transformed our design into the colours that we actually wanted. So I can turn that on or off just by going to my layers again, like so. But the main thing is now this little group here has the appropriate colours attached to it. So while I'm here, I'm actually going to create this mock-up and also do a few of those social media colour variations which I showed you in my final document. So let's just resize this slightly down here just by using the corner option and by holding shift to make sure everything stays the right proportions, something like that. And I'm just going to make a new couple of artboards, square artboards for this, with our design in the middle, like so. And in fact, let's just make sure that is in the middle by going over to the align options, such as align center and align middle. There we go. This is just again a quick example. So we have our design with the white background. Let's duplicate that and create an alternative option here. Let's turn the background into this yellow colour. So I'm going to do this by using the colour picker, or I. That's a nice quick redesign there. And let's create a version with a black background as well. So let's just drag that in the middle. And first of all, I'm going to change the colour again to black. And you'll notice that some of my elements have gone missing. So let's just turn that off for a second. Or actually, let's give it a blue colour just to highlight what we're doing. Actually, blue is quite nice as well. In fact, while we're there, let's do a duplicate of that because it's quite a nice option. But let's use this blue just to highlight the different sections. Now, the benefit to doing the sort of black outline version is it means that if you were to print this onto a black t-shirt, which we're going to do in a second, in this mock-up, you are then able to have fewer print or screen layers. Essentially, when you screen print onto a t-shirt, each colour is printed onto that t-shirt via a different screen. So, which is why people often say about, a screen print poster or t-shirt with many colours is basically much more expensive to put together and also much more impressive because it's a much harder technique to get right and to line all of those layers together as well. So I actually want to change this text to a red colour, and because it is currently being changed, or it currently has the gradient map applied to it, if we actually change this, once we've selected it, change it to our 50% grey, that will instantly change that to the red that we had selected because of this gradient map. So that'll make more sense when I go to change the artboard colour to black instead. Now there you go. So what we can see there is if we turn off our black outline, we're actually given basically the same effect that we had before, but by using fewer colours. So we've just got our red layer there, our yellow bolt layers, and then our text. So this would actually just result usually in 2 screens being made. Occasionally printing light colours on a dark t-shirt may require 1 layer of white being printed first, which I think is how that would often be done. But in terms of colours, you would generally just be sort of paying for 2 colours to be printed. So it's just worth bearing that in mind. But now we have our new design, which is suitable for a black background. Let's copy that and put it on our black t-shirt so we can see it in situ. So just copy and paste, and actually it gives me a good example or a good way to show you how that's worked. So by adjusting the colours appropriately and by turning off what once was our black fill layer, we're given this really quite cool sort of different sections to our design. So let's resize that, holding shift as well. So for this mock-up I actually just want to have a nice quite bold front, I think like chest pocket area, I think that's what they often call it, and then the same design duplicated on the back as well, like so. And you can spend time adjusting the blend modes you've got here to try and get some of the texture through of the t-shirt, and there's various ways you can do that. But realistically for this design I actually just want a quick mock-up so people can sort of see where if this t-shirt was to go to print, this is basically what you would be ending up with, and just gives people a good way to see if they actually want to buy the t-shirt or not. So there we go. So that's a quick way to do that. And I'm just going to leave the white one there because we've seen that already in our final design, how that will actually look. But what I'm actually going to do now is go back to this final design of the one I made earlier, and I'm just going to show you how you might basically get these files ready for a print shop, or if you were going to get them printed online. Now the 2 things to mention, in this case we're looking at printing t-shirts, and so the key thing we need to bear in mind is I've shown you the sort of quick template routes you can go down, and and how you can get your images ready for social media, just nice punchy bright design images there. To actually get them printed, there's two different methods. So if you were going to go down the screen print traditional method, which I highly recommend in terms of quality and sort of longevity, the way that generally works, for example, if we were going to print this white t-shirt with these three colours, the black, the red and the yellow there, they would need to have three different print files. So I'm just going to show you quickly how that kind of thing would work by just duplicating this main artboard again. So the main thing to consider is most print shops will be able to give you help with this, or at least advice on their particular methods. But what we'd need to do is to go in and make sure we have our layers separate. So as you can see, I can turn my top layer off and I've got my different coloured sections there as well. Is you'd need to be able to send them a print file for each colour. So what we could do in this example, and again this is just a quick thing just to show you how it works. The black area would be one screen, so we'd need to turn off the two layers underneath, and that would be one screen that would get produced. You then also need to do a screen with just the red area. That would need to be sent, however, in a pure black print file. Now, to do that, there's a really quick way you can do it, and there are basically various ways you can do it, but a really quick solution to that would be to select your layer like so, go to Layer Effects, and just add a colour overlay. Straight away, that's giving you a black there, which could be anything else, but to be able to send them what would be a suitable sort of black print file, that's a dead quick way for you to do that. So as I say, the idea is that you'd need to go through your design and separate each colour and send that as a separate print file. So that's just a quick run through of how that works. Now, many other places that don't use screen printing methods, you can do Dtg Printing, which is direct to garment printing, which is basically a different method using completely different sorts of printers. But most of those printers only require you to send a PNG file. So what I can do here is just show you, just by clicking on my main design layer and then going to File and Document Setup, and then going to Colour and adding transparent background, you'll see that this is how I could save a clear PNG of my design, which you can also just do either by using the export persona or by using the file and export, or this handy shortcut here. By clicking on that, you then need to go to PNG and just do the highest resolution you can do, and that's it. You would then have a clear PNG file without any white background. So the benefit to that is you're printing on a white t-shirt. You don't then want to include a white area for these Dtg print solutions, because you just need it to be a totally clear background, ensuring that only the actual colours you need are printed onto the garment. And also it means you can very easily do alternative colours because there's no conflicting layers there. It's just a clear background for you to print on. And you can also use that for printing on, phone cases or other accessories, anything like that, once you've got your clear PNG. So that's basically the run through of how to take your initial sketch idea and really utilising the pixel persona mainly, create a final design which you can then use to promote a printed product. So there you go, that is the full run through of that technique. So there you go, hope you enjoyed that session. Let me know if you've got any questions whatsoever, and I'll be answering those in the comments section below. And also let me know if you had any preferences between the colour options that I designed there as well. That'll be really interesting to see. And don't forget to check out all the other tutorials and lockdown sessions that we've put together on the Affinity channel when you get a chance to as well. And I'll see you in the next video. Thanks a lot.